If this video gets 300 likes, it gets 300 likes. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? What's up, my Nimrods? It's Gage coming back at you guys again with another video today. I am truly thankful that you guys would spend a couple minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble about a silly card game. Really does mean a lot to me. But today we're talking about something a little bit different today. Today we're going to have you busting out your old shoebox of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and really we're diving deep to see if any of them are still worth anything. That's right, I'm talking to you, buddy, the guy that happened to stumble upon the Yu-Gi-Oh anime after many years of not seeing it, possibly while watching the marathon while it's going on Twitch. Who knows? I'm talking to you, and working at a card shop for a little while now, I constantly have people coming in asking me what their old collections are worth. Most of them tied by a gum band. I have to turn them away and just shatter their dreams. Well, let me save you guys the trip to the card shop, and I'll tell you if what you have is possibly worth anything. So today we're going to be talking about the top 5 old Yu-Gi-Oh cards you might own that may be worth some coin. These are cards from the first few sets of the game. I'm mostly just going by what most people had played as a kid. So maybe if you dig up your old shoebox or something, you might find these cards laying around, and maybe you can turn them into a local trading card shop for a couple of bucks. But I'm gonna just disclaimer, most likely 100% your collection is not worth anything. I know it kind of sucks having your old dreams stepped on like that, but most of these old sets of Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, maybe not Magic the Gathering, but the old sets of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh were printed in such large amounts that really all these cards aren't as rare as you'd think they'd be. However, like the Pokemon trading card game, Yu-Gi-Oh has a pretty distinct way of distinguishing what cards would be worth a lot more money than possibly the ones that were printed in masses for most people to pick up. For example, for Pokemon, if you want to know if you're holding onto a gem of one of the older cards in the set, you would have to look for what's called a shadowless print of the card. This is where around the border these days in all Pokemon cards, there is a shadow dropping down from the border. If any of your cards from these older sets don't happen to have that border, they may be worth a couple bucks. And if you have maybe a Charizard, for example, it could be worth a couple $100. You might be sitting on a gold mine there. This might be a really stupid way to distinguish cards, but this is what separates the cards that were printed in a very short amount from the cards that were printed in large quantities for everyone. If any of your cards have a border around them, chances are they're not worth more than a couple cents, even if they're from the very first set of Pokemon. And I know how much that sucks to hear. Yu-Gi-Oh has its own way of distinguishing what cards are worth more than the average Joe, and this is told by the first edition mark. For all the older sets and all the cards we'll be talking about in this video, the first edition is right under the image and right above the text box. If you don't have anything there, you still actually might be looking at a couple bucks, and that's what I'm going to go over with you guys today. Here are 5 cards that you probably own that might actually be worth some money. So hopping into number 5, a card that you guys might have is actually Mirror Force from Metal Raiders, the ultra rare printing. Mirror Force is a card where if you had it as a kid, you dominated the playground. This card shown multiple times in the anime, flipping major games over to have Yugi win them. This is a landmark card in the game. Everybody knows about Mirror Force. But besides being the king of the playground, this card actually had an amazing utility in the game's actual competitive scene way back in the day, putting it straight on the Forbidden and Limited list at 1 just because of how powerful this card was for the longest time. The game's not at all what it used to be back in the day, so while this card dominated your lunch table and just showed your friends, you know, what's up, this card is not as nearly as powerful as it was, actually coming back to 3 now, so you can now play 3 copies of it once again. But the thing about this card is it still actually holds a little bit of value if you happen to have the older printings of the card. This card has been through multiple reprints in different rarities, now really easy to obtain the card, but nothing is quite as nice as owning the original printing of the card, and that's the one that most kids actually might have. Currently, if you have a Metal Raiders Unlimited edition of Mirror Force, you could actually be sitting on a little bit around $5 if you happen to have it in a decent condition, which is most likely lightly played to near mint. As I said before, most of your cards probably aren't worth as much as you'd like them to be, but $5 is $5. But it's also really important to note that if you happen to own a first edition printing of the Metal Raiders Ultra Rare Mirror Force, you're sitting sitting on a lot more than $5. This is a trend that happens with a lot of these older cards where the unlimited editions might be worth a couple bucks, but if you have a first edition print, you're instantly doubling, tripling even the price of the card. For example, a first edition of the Metal Raiders Mirror Force is worth around $39 US right now. That's like pretty much a 4 times amount of the unlimited edition. 5, maybe 8 times even, Jesus Christ. I can't emphasize how important this first edition symbol is for people that are just digging through their shoebox trying to see if they have a couple bucks worth of cards. Truly, it does make a regular piece of crap you have potentially a gemstone if you just happen to have that one label on it. Number 4 is a card that a lot of people may not actually have, but when I happen to dig through a lot of old collections, it's one that people have surprisingly enough for me to bring it up, and that is Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, released in Magic Ruler. Now, Blue Eyes Toon Dragon is a secret rare, so it's one of the more difficult cards in the set to get, but I actually surprisingly see this card enough in older collections to bring it up. It's a card that actually really looked cool, and it was one that people most likely back in the day aggressively tried to trade with their friends for, which is probably why when people bring them in later, they happen to have maybe one copy laying around. And of course, you never really back in the day played by the rules, so you probably never actually summoned this card correctly, but hey, that doesn't matter when you're holding on to a couple bucks. And Blue Eyes Toon Dragon is no exception. If you happen to have an unlimited edition of this card laying around, you're looking, if it's in decent condition, mind you, probably around $10 or so. This actually isn't so bad for a card I've seen multiple times laying around. $10 isn't that bad. When you're trying to turn an entire collection, it could add up easily. But also this card, if you happen to move into its first edition territory, you're easily moving up to the $26 to $30 range if you happen to have this card, again, in good condition. Side note also, if you happen to have the original Blue Eyes White Dragon from Legend of Blue Eyes, this artwork in particular, I'll have the exact artworks up here so you don't get confused with the other less expensive version of Blue Eyes White Dragon, which is from the starter deck Kaiba. If you happen to have this specific one, even an unlimited or first edition, especially first edition, you would be looking at a couple $100 for first edition. Unlimited, going to be probably looking around more like $5. While that's a huge gap, I understand, hey, it's still a little bit of money. But Blue Eyes Toon Dragon takes the number 4 spot for the staggering amount of time I've actually happened to see this card in older collections. Might want to take a look to make sure you don't have it. Number 3 actually goes to Gate Guardian, a secret rare from Metal Raiders. Of course, Gate Guardian being a secret rare, again, it was a little bit more difficult of a card to obtain, but this card, if you had it on the playground, you were cool. That was it. It was awesome. This is another one of those cards that I surprisingly see floating around a lot, and it's because, again, I think it's a lot of players back in the day, they decided to trade for it just because it looked cool, often trading their Blue Eyes White Dragons, which actually, looking back on it, was probably a good deal on your part because Blue Eyes wasn't worth as much today's standard as maybe this Gate Guardian would be. If you happen to have an unlimited edition Gate Guardian from Metal Raiders on your hand, you're looking at around $15 minimum. $15 isn't really a laughing matter, that's actually more than the Blue Eyes Toon Dragon was. But if you're looking at a first edition copy of the card that you have your hands on, you're actually looking at a lot more, probably around $30 plus, depending on the condition of a card again. This card actually more so than Blue Eyes Toon Dragon resonates with a lot more people. A lot more people would probably recognize Gate Guardian over Blue Eyes Toon Dragon, which is why I decided to place it higher on the list, not only also because of the fact that it's actually worth more money. If you have a Gate Guardian, somebody's going to want it. That's just the case. Whether it's a collector that's willing to take it off your hands, or, you know, a card shop will probably most likely happily take this card off your hands for a couple bucks. Moving into number 2 is easily one of the most recognizable cards in the entire series, and that is Exodia, the Forbidden One from Legend of Blue Eyes. Literally everybody knows about Exodia, and if you had even a piece of Exodia, everybody wanted it off your hands back in the day. It was just, you were the person to talk to. Doesn't matter if you had a left leg or a right arm, you held a piece of Exodia, you felt like you had that infinite power back in the day. And that price and that power has really carried over well into today's standards, with most of the pieces of Exodia sitting around $5, and if you happen to have the head in near mint condition, $10 for the unlimited copies of the card. Of course, if you happen to have a whole set on your hands, you're actually looking around maybe $20 to $25, which that's actually in its own not too bad, if that's for the unlimited though. But if we want to look at the really big money, we're going to be looking at the first editions of all these pieces. Good luck finding a piece of Exodia, the right leg, the left leg. Good luck luck finding any of these first edition pieces for under $50. These were of course a lot harder to get your hands on, but if you were a kid, you wanted a piece of Exodia no matter what it was. So if you happen to unknowingly have the first edition of any of these pieces, you're sitting on a gold mine. The head is really where it comes to a pinnacle though. If you happen to have the head of Exodia, the Forbidden One, in first edition, you're looking at around $90 minimum for one of these copies, provided again it's in decent condition. This is actually pretty surprising because all the pieces of Exodia were ultra rare back in the Legend of Blue Eyes days. Since they're all the same rarity, you have the equivalent chance of getting either a piece that's worth maybe $50 if it's first edition, or the head, which is worth $100. You have the same kind of chance to get them because they're all the same rarity. So if you happen to have this Exodia the Forbidden One with the same set name and everything in first edition, congratulations, you made yourself a couple bucks there. Even if it's in limited edition, a couple like $10 isn't too bad though. Also keep a note that if you have the retro pack version of Exodia the Forbidden One, any of the pieces or the head, it's actually also worth around $20. This is a little pack that maybe people don't even have as a kid though, so I kind of wanted to opt it out, but it is old enough for me to bring up. But now for the number one slot, you maybe would have thought that all those other ones before kind of sounded like, hey, everybody has these, but this is one that I think a lot more people would have that's actually worth a lot of money no matter what the edition it is, and that is Raigeki from the Legend of Blue Eyes. Raigeki is a very prominent card in the anime and has a very simple effect of destroy all monsters on the field. Way better than Dark Hole ever was. This card definitely shown its way into the game, even on the competitive scene, being swiftly banned in the first ban list, I believe, just because of how insane the card was. Maybe it was like the second or third, but this card was banned for the longest time in the game. But actually, believe it or not, this card is back at 1 today, so people can play their beloved Raigeki again. And people want their hands on those older copies, which is where you might come in. Since Raigeki was a super rare back in Legend of Blue Eyes, it was actually easier to obtain than any of the Exodia pieces because the rarity system goes rare, super rare, ultra rare, and then secret rare. So since this card was actually rather obtainable, a lot of people might actually have a copy laying around. And if you happen to have a copy laying around in decent condition, unlimited, you're probably going to be looking at around $25. That's a huge significant increase from even the Exodia head. That's a lot of money you're sitting on. $25 for an unlimited edition of a super rare card, which again, I can't stress enough that that's easier to get than any of the ultra rares, is actually pretty much unheard of. And this is a card that a lot of people might have since it was from the very first set of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now saying this that it has a really good minimum price, it doesn't actually have the most impressive first edition price in the world. $80 is not as significant of an increase, a difference of that as like maybe the Exodia head, but it still is a big difference nonetheless. $80 is $80. I don't see why you'd be complaining. But Raigeki easily snags the number 1 of the list just because of how significantly easier it is to get than all the other cards on the list that I listed. And that its price minimum is actually insane for what it is. $25 is still a pretty hefty amount for a card that you most likely own. So hopefully, gold miners out there, I helped you dig through your box and maybe helped you make a couple bucks, or at best, I saved you a trip to the card shop to maybe waste your time as we tell you, hey, we don't want any of your garbage.
That's all, folks.
If you guys liked the video, be sure to like the video, thumbs up the video, especially if you enjoyed the video. Please do consider subscribing to the channel if you aren't subscribed already. I do post regularly. I'm going to just say this as a disclaimer since I'm at the end of the video. If you're not a regular viewer and kind of are accustomed to my competitive content, I apologize. This maybe really wasn't right up your alley. I tried to make it as friendly to new viewers or people that are just trying to get a couple bucks, again, from, like I said, the demographic of people digging through their shoebox. I'll be back to regular content probably tomorrow, or yeah, probably tomorrow. I really don't think I'd stick with this. If you guys did enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up anyways. Why not? But yeah, that being said, be sure to like, comment, and definitely subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. Nim Nim signing out.